my life. It's a life story. I have osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones. And when I was a kid, I used to break bones, hundreds of bones, um, merely by sneezing or coughing. Or one time I broke a bone by throwing a beanbag during a game.
So, hello everyone. I am so thrilled to share with you a new and deep friend of mine, Greg Smith. He is the author of An Unbreakable Spirit, My Life with Brittle Bones. So, welcome, Greg. I would like to hear a little bit about your story.
Hi, Jillian. It's nice to meet you and see you. Um, Thanks for having me on. Uh, Yeah, An Unbreakable Spirit is about my life. It's a life story. I have osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones. And when I was a kid, I used to break bones, hundreds of bones, um, merely by sneezing or coughing. Or one time I broke a bone by throwing a beanbag during a game. And it was very challenging. And I had four surgeries that were associated with OI, and it's a genetic condition, and it first manifested itself when I was 2 years old. And there are different types of OI, and they told me that I was the type 3, which is a type where you can't walk, and I can't. I use a wheelchair to get around. And you break a lot of bones. The average lifespan is 25 years, and I was blessed. My parents took such great care of me when I was a kid, um, that I survived. And here I am, I'm 65, so almost triple. And they tell me, I don't know, they tell me I'm one of the oldest people, survivors of osteogenesis imperfecta around. So you know what? I'm really lucky. It may sound kind of weird that here I am with this condition that has affected my life, practically all my life. But I do feel lucky. And why do I say that? I do feel lucky because I'm here. I'm still kicking. I'm still able to do what I love. And it just, I think in a weird way, Jillian, it has made me a stronger person because I've needed to be strong at particular times in my life, especially. So, so
Yeah.
that's a little bit about the book. Yeah,
And I know we've recently met, and just your spirit and it being called an unbreakable spirit. I know a little bit about, who has been kind of the providers of helping you to have such an optimistic outlook, and your ability to navigate life and be such a special spirit to be around. Can you tell us a little bit more about your inspirations and your support system?
sure. That's a good point. Support system. We all need a support system, right? Um, and I was lucky enough, first of all, that my parents were the best. They were the best support system. They were always optimistic. They wouldn't let me get down on myself when I was in a cast all the time and breaking bones. My dad was the sports guy. He was the guy you'd want to sit down and have a beer with and talk sports. And since I live near Philadelphia, he was a big Phillies and Eagles fan. And so I became a big Phillies and Eagles fan. And I listened to games on my transistor radio or watched them on TV. And one of the ways my dad always kept me positive and hopeful is, well, Greg, things might be a little rough right now. You just broke a bone, but you got to hang in there because next spring the Phillies are playing again, and I plan on getting tickets, and I want you to go with me. That kept me going. And that was everyone needs a purpose in life, right? Everyone needs a goal. Everyone needs something to look forward to in life, or
Yeah,
else what good is life?
and
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I'm interrupted you. I'm just thinking, because we know a little bit more about your just the things that are in your book. And I'm excited because I already know since we've had the opportunity to chat about it. So I
Yeah.
would love to give other people the opportunity to know just what things have you included and what type of audience would be a good audience to read your book.
Well, Jillian, I think when I originally wrote the book, I thought about that. I thought, now, who would want to read it, And I thought, well, certainly other people with challenges in life, and everyone has a certain challenge in life. Um, People maybe in the medical field would be interested in the in osteogenesis imperfecta. And again, if I could bring awareness to what OI is, that's great. That's great. I thought maybe other social workers. I ended up being a social worker for 30 years, mostly in hospitals and nursing homes. So that was kind of cool. So I thought, well, maybe other social workers, because I do write about that quite a bit, what it's like to be a social worker. And so that was my audience. But then I thought about it more. I thought, you know what? I think everybody could really relate to this story. And the reason is because not only do everyone have challenges in life, different kinds of challenges, but the things that I go through in my story, I think are very relatable to everyone. Everyone. Um, so I've sort of expanded the audience who I think would really not only enjoy the story, but really find hope in it. And I think I think that's the key word, Jillian. I think the key word is hope. We all need hope. Look at the world that we live in right now. Sometimes a very dark, dreary place. Sad. And I think we all need some hope. I think we all need to smile, and I think we all need to see that no matter what, things could be worse, and that don't give up. I think that's a big message too. There's always hope. As long as you have hope, hope is still alive. It's just, just
Yeah.
always have hope. So I think that's a big part of my story.
Yeah, and it's certainly a part of just your being around you and developing our fast friendship, that optimism. And we had our problem solving skills, my own technological challenges that I like to bring up.
Yeah,
And on
these are.
that, the things that we take for granted, we were talking earlier about some things that have changed over the years that have created a bigger world and have made the world a little bit more accessible. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. When I was growing up in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, um, the world wasn't very accessible to people who use wheelchairs. Um, there were ramps everywhere, there were curbs everywhere. You couldn't get into a building. It was just a very, very hard place to get around. I know when I started thinking about what I wanted to do with my life, um, a lot of the things I really, really, really wanted to do, I couldn't. And the reason was because not because I wasn't determined and motivated to do them. It was because realistically it was just not accessible to do. You know, if I wanted to be a sports reporter or a sports announcer covering football, how was I going to climb the bleachers at the football stadiums? There were no elevators. How do you get up there? I mean, things like that. Just reality was very hard, and it's very hard to realize how people say you can't do this and know that they're right. So I always look at it that I think when the Americans with Disability Act was passed, I believe in '92, 1992. That was a big landmark for people with disabilities. Why? Because pre 1992, it was like the Dark Ages. You really couldn't get around, and not only that, you could be discriminated against in a workplace. Um, uh, Buildings didn't have to be made accessible for people with disabilities. Um, it was a very different time. After 1992, things started getting better. You know, I think it was. Uh, it could always be better. I think it's not a perfect world, but things are better compared to when I was growing up. There are more places with ramps and curbs and elevators to get around. People and places are more accessible. The stadiums I go to watch the Phillies and the Eagles, now there are places for wheelchairs to be where people can't stand up and they're in the way, so you can't see what's going on. I mean, that was my world back when I was growing up. Steps in stadiums, my dad would carry me around. Sitting in locations where people stand up and you can't see the game. It was just. I think about the Dark Ages, and then after things got better, how thing. It's a much brighter world for, especially for people with a disability in life.
Yeah, and you were mentioning some things, it's I'm really glad to see that the world is improving, but there are some stereotypes that need to be crushed. Can you tell us a little bit more about the things that you brought up that we really need to work on?
It's very interesting because stereotype wise, um, yeah, I went to school, got my degree, became a social worker. And here I was, this social worker with the tie on and the tag and everything, and going to work. And I was really happy. And it's like, wow, this is what I always wanted to do. And yet sometimes I would get in the elevator and people would stand over me and pat me on the head like a little dog, you know? I'm like, why, what the hell? So, condescending, people would talk like, I think the big thing too, Jillian, is I think there's this idea sometimes still that just because you have the tag of social worker doesn't mean that you can really do the job. You're sitting in a wheelchair. How can you help people? How can you do what it takes to be a social worker? You know, I think there's this negative uh, perception sometimes of people with disabilities that can't, the word can't instead of the word can, instead of ability, it's disability.
Hmm.
And I still encounter that from time to time, but I really encountered it when I got out there in the work world. It was very surprising to me that even though I got my degree and I was working, there was still so much you can't. The word can't was out there, and a lot of times, from people with able-bodied people, it's like so that sort of prejudice was out there a great deal. Again, I'll tell you one thing though, Jillian. I think things are awareness is the key. That's the key word. Along with hope, it's awareness. Think of it this way. Now you see so much more people with disabilities in the media, in movies, in commercials, on TV. Um, the chances are you may be working with someone with a disability. You may be going to school with someone with a disability. Awareness is the key. When I was growing up, I was stared at a great deal because I do look different. You can't see it, but my legs are shorter and they're twisted, and because of all the fractures I had when I was a kid. Um, but uh, whenever I would go out, let's say to the mall, I'd get a lot of stares. And I learned to live with it. I learned to deal with it because what else can you do other than staying home all the time?
Mhm.
So I got a lot of stares, but guess what? Nowadays, I can go to the mall. I don't get as many stares. And I notice it. Why? Because I think there's so much more awareness out there about people with disabilities. People are more comfortable with people who are different. And I think that's a good thing. So, in that way, I think the stereotypes are being crushed. Maybe not one big crush at one time, but slow crushing. Things are getting better.
Yeah, and I appreciate for the opportunity to have increased awareness and your spread of hope. Again, I thank everyone, and I have my book coming so that we're going to continue to talk about Greg's story and his exploration. Again, his book is called An Unbreakable Spirit: My Life with Brittle Bones, which will help us to increase our awareness and help the amazing hope that Greg is sharing to be spread around. So thank you so much for Greg for coming on and meeting us with
Thanks.
us today, and certainly for sharing your voice and your story through that awesome book that you have.
Thanks, Sheila. And I look forward to being back with you again sometime. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely, I look forward to having you back on very often, and maybe you'll start to make me a sports fan again. See your sports emblem.
Oh, well, we'll try. Yes. Isn't that something? The dishwasher has an eagle head on it. How bad is that, huh? You should see the refrigerator. It's terrible.
Well, you're certainly going to turn me more into a sports fan than help solve my ability to keep plants alive. So we'll start with the sports.
Okay. I'll work on you with the sports and the plants, and you help me out too. And
All right,
we'll
that
do
sounds
okay.
good.
We'll do okay.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you, Sheila.
Yeah.